winner of the Penn Gene Stein Book Award and a finalist for the National Book Critics John Leonard Award for Best First Book and the Aspen Words Literary Prize. Originally from Spring Valley, New York, he graduated from SUNY Albany, went on to receive his MFA from Syracuse University. I loved Adjei-Brenyah's Friday Black when it came out in 2018. Thought it was one of the strongest debut collections I'd read in a long time. Here at ASU, I've taught the opening story, The Finkelstein Five, in several classes since, and it's consistently provoked excellent discussions, not just about writing craft, but also about how to engage with issues of race and violence in fiction. His Chain Gang All-Stars, which we'll hear from tonight, feels to me like a continuation of the work in that story, first as work of fiction depicting, interrogating, and imagining a way out of varieties of kind of violence. Second, as a type specimen of what I think of as activist fiction, explicitly charging the reader with joining and creating a better world than the one we're reading about or the one we live in. I think it's a smart, thrilling, and brave novel, and I'm so glad Adjei-Brenyah is here to read from it tonight. I find his work incredibly hopeful in its implicit argument there's a better world we can and should make. As he said in an interview, at the heart of this book is the capacity of incarcerated people to resist and rewrite the rules of their imprisonment. After his reading, Adjei-Brenyah will be joined in conversation by ASU's own Mitchell S. Jackson, winner of the 2021 Pulitzer Prize in Feature Writing, 2021 National Magazine Award in Feature Writing. His debut novel, The Residue Years, won a Whiting Award and the Ernest J. Gaines Prize for Literary Excellence. His essay collection, Survival Math, was named a Best Book of 2019 by 15 publications. Jackson's also the author of Fly, the Big Book of Basketball Fashion. He's a contributing writer for the New York Times Magazine and a columnist for Esquire. After the conversation, there will be space for Q&A, so please have your questions ready, and there are, of course, books for sale, and I believe Nana will be glad to sign them for you after the event. Please join me in welcoming Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah.
So much. Thank y'all. I appreciate that very much. Matt has been a great supporter of my work since really the beginning, and just off the love. Like I didn't even know him like that, so that's really cool. It's always dope to be somewhere where you get sunshine like a lot. Where I'm from, we don't have that. I'm gonna skip my usual playful banter because I am currently teaching in an adjunct capacity at a certain university in New York City. That's been in the news quite a bit. I don't know why I'm being coy about that. I'm just an adjunct. They don't give me insurance, so it's Columbia University. It's fine. I feel like my program is on the right side of these things, but maybe you've heard about how things are going down there. From the story in the news, you'd think that people are just like throwing Molotov cocktails everywhere, sacrificing children on the campus grounds, that maybe students are in Nazi garb marching across the lawns. We, the professors, have actually been asked to shift all their classes to like hybrid because the administration believes that, maybe students feel like they're too afraid to be on campus. And just really quick, for those who have no idea what's happening, a large contingent of students at Columbia University, and in many cases, groups of students who are led by Jewish students, have chosen to camp out on the campus lawns. They are protesting to push for the university to divest from companies that would profit from the occupation and ongoing genocide currently happening in Palestine. But, I can say that, but what does it actually look like on campus right now? I was there on Tuesday, so this is like, cutting edge right now. It looks like students on the lawn with tents. It looks like people literally camping. It looks like students holding Seder dinner for Passover, literally sharing matzo ball soup, singing songs. It actually kind of looks and feels pretty boring. And yet, it would be boring if the school had not called police forces. It would be boring had men with guns not descended and put gates everywhere. The response to the student protest has been arrests and suspensions. The response to peaceful protests has been violent, but because of bad storytelling, and because the lies are so easy, they're almost reflex for so many of our elected officials, you would think that it's just like some horror show that just doesn't exist. And you would forget that the people, that you and me, are the ones that are always actually negotiating ourselves against the state's violent potential. And as like sort of a segue into this book, I think the prison is really one of the cornerstones of this like ever-present violent potential. So, and I guess, and one last thing, I think it's just pretty funny that maybe the greatest gentrifier in the history of New York City is literally like causing all this hubbub for and trying to get kids to like get off their lawn, get off my lawn. That's kind of what they're saying, but with guns now, and it's pretty like nuts to see. I'll talk a little bit more after this first section about sort of the thoughts and vibes about why they're protesting and sort of the situation that we're in right now. But I'm going to read a little bit from the beginning of this book. I say the beginning and not the prologue because I once canvassed Twitter and I said, when you guys see prologue in a book, you definitely read it, right? Yeah, the results were varied at best. I probably don't have to tell y'all this. Many of y'all are writers, but if you see prologue in a book, please read it. Part of the book. It's not like a preface or even an introduction. Prologue means this is part of the book, please read. And for this section, I'm going to have, if you all wouldn't mind helping me a little bit, you guys think you could say like a name or a word on command? I see enthusiastic nods. I appreciate that. The name is Bishop. So I'll give you like a this. Y'all say Bishop. Let's practice it. 1, 2, 3. Not bad. But let's do it just like that, but like better, you know, like way better. 1, 2, 3. Woo, chills. Just like that. And I'll give you the mark. And for those who don't know, this book is my second book. It's called Chain Gang All-Stars. It's about an imagined future in which convicted wards of state can opt out of a sentence of at least 25 years and participate in death matches. It thinks a lot about the carceral systems and how they maybe choke our capacity to grow a more compassionate civilization. This not prologue is called The Freeing of Melancholia Bishop. She felt their eyes. All those executioners. Welcome, young lady, said Mickey Wright, the premier announcer for Chain Gang All-Stars, the crown jewel in the criminal action penal entertainment program. Why don't you tell us your name? His high boots were planted in the turf of the battleground, which was long and green, stroked with cocaine white hash marks like a divergent football field. It was Super Bowl weekend, a fact that Wright was contractually obligated to mention between every match that evening. You know my name. She noticed her own steadiness and felt a dim love for herself. Strange. She counted herself wretched for so long, but the crowd seemed to appreciate her boldness. They cheered, though their support was edged with a brutal irony. They looked down on this Black woman, dressed in the gray jumpsuit of the incarcerated. She was tall and strong. They looked down on her and the tight coils of black hair on her head. They looked down gleefully. She was about to die. They believed this the way they believed in the sun and the moon and the air they breathed. Feisty, Wright said with a grin. That's what we should call you, Little Miss Feisty. My name is Loretta Thurwar, she said. She looked at the people all around her. There were so many of them, so many waves of humans who would never be the object of such cruel attention. We never know how it made you feel, both tiny and all-powerful. How the thrum of thousands was so loud, so constant, could disappear from your ears, but continue to roar as something felt in the body. Thurwar gripped the weapon she'd been given. A thin, spiraling corkscrew with a cherry wood handle. It was light and simple and weak. Not Little Miss Feisty then, Wright said, walking a wide orbit around her. No. That's probably for the best, Loretta. He stepped towards his box. I hate wasting good names anyway. He laughed and the crowd echoed him. Well, Loretta Thurwar. He threw his playful condescension directly at her, chopping her first name to 3 hard syllables, using a sing-song child's voice for her last. Welcome to the battleground, baby. There was an electric cough in the air, and Thurwar was pulled down so forcefully she feared for a moment her arm had been dislocated at the shoulder. Kneeling, not knowing what else to do, she started to laugh. Chuckling first, then deep laughter. The feeling of hold that came from the magnetic implants in her arms was actually one of gentle massage under the skin. She could wiggle her fingers freely, but her wrists were glued to the platform. The ridiculousness of it all. She laughed until she fell out of breath and laughed some more. Then the bells began to sound. Wright screamed into the air. Please rise for Her Majesty. He ran the rest of his way to his announcer's box. The crowd stood at their feet. They held themselves still and erect for her. She walked onto the faux football field, aluminum alloy on her arms, braids that stopped at the back of her neck, exposed shoulders, each tattooed with the Whole Market trademark logo. A series of rods jutted out from her chest guard and circled her muscled abdomen to form a sleek cage. It was a custom creation. Thurwar had watched, even cheered, the first time she'd seen that the metallic pieces initially thought to be exclusively defensive were more. She'd been watching, huddled with the others in her cell block around the streaming video feed when the woman had removed 2 of the rods from her guard and pressed them into Slingshot Bob's eyes. And now, Bishop was seeing them up close. This was Melancholia Bishop's final fight. Bishop had made it. She had done what no woman before her had done, survived 3 years on the circuit. 3 years of slamming down her hammer, Haas Omaha, and swiping her mace, Vega. 3 years conquering souls. Drowned King County's very own Queen of the Damned. All she had in her hands was her helmet. Melody's helm, Crusader style, made of tin with a gold cross down its middle. The Annihilator, the bad news bitch, the death songstress herself. The 7th bell rang, the people screamed for years. This had been their sacred ritual. The 7 bells of Melancholia Bishop. They'd seen her wipe scum off the earth. They'd seen her kill women and men who they'd once claimed to love. Now, she stood and looked out at them for the last time. Soon, she would be free. Melancholia! 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 The crowd chanted. Her brown eyes explored the bleachers. Then she raised the helm above her head. Once it was on, she was home. Melancholia! 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 For the last time ever, Wright cheered. Please help me welcome the winningest woman to ever step on the battleground. The mistress of the murder ballad, the sacred sweetheart, the Crusader. The baddest the planet has ever seen. Your very own Melody, Melancholia, Price. Your very own, Thurwar thought. Routed by the force of love that exploded from the audience. They loved her so. And still, this woman, despite it all, belonged to none of them. She had an aura about her that made it clear. It was enough to push Thurwar's eyes down to the ground, as if the woman in front of her truly were royalty. Thurwar watched, bowed in her keep, an impossible power in front of her. The hammer, a mace. On one side of the field, there was a knight in her armor. On the other, there was Thurwar in a jumpsuit, a corkscrew slick in her clammy hands. I'll stop there for that one. Thank you, guys. Good job. Don't worry, there's more effort for y'all to put in. I know it's a lot of free labor. It's the American way. Um, but yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit more because it's like coming back from Colombia is kind of on my head just with everything that's going on. And, people often say that like everything that's going on. And that phrase often feels to me a little bit like a lifeguard that doesn't know how to swim, gesturing feebly to something real, a flailing, drowning someone, but gesturing broadly and only gesturing even as the last bubbles pop and the water finds stillness. To be specific, in this moment, when I say everything that's going on, what do I mean? I mean that in the United States of America, there has been a 12% increase in homelessness, recently reported by the Associated Press. And that truth shines in my mind, along with the reality that America, in a recent arms package, approved funds and the shipment of more than 1,800 MK-84 2,000-pound bombs. The same sorts of bombs have already contributed to the deaths of over 30,000 children and adults in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. A little bit about the MK-84 bomb. It's described by General Dynamics Corporation, a Fortune 500 company, as a general purpose bomb. That was me doing quotes. I couldn't do it with the paper, but you get it. A general purpose bomb. I think that general purpose bomb is probably a little bit of a misnomer because a bomb doesn't wash your dishes. It definitely won't do your homework. The general purpose of the MK-84 made by General Dynamics is to obliterate, to kill, generally. The MK-84 has a lethal fragmentation radius of 400 yards. That means that if the weapon landed 2 football fields away, you and me and everything in this beautiful space would be well within its murderous embrace. The MK-84 was designed to destroy, to kill indiscriminately, and to kill generally. You might be wondering why all this talk about genocidal companies and the weapons that you pay for with your tax dollars and homelessness when this book that I wrote is concerned with the American prison system. I've been thinking a lot about how to sort of fit this thing in, and really I didn't have to think too much because it's sort of right there. I think that many of y'all are writers, and hopefully many of y'all can feel and see that the militarized carceral state here in America enables and empowers occupation and destruction elsewhere, just as it diminishes our capacity for compassion here. I think that all of us, writers or not, should know and care that it is a militarized carceral state that would see students literally calling for peace and feel mortally threatened. All this while shares of General Dynamics soar, unlike their bombs, which will plummet from the sky and kill children. And just for make it more specific, to put a point on this, in Colombia, one of the things that the students are protesting, maybe the main thing, is for divestment in certain companies. They're trying to make the school, they have a huge endowment, Ivy League, blah, 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 billions of dollars. One of the companies that they are in their portfolio is known as BlackRock. BlackRock is a huge investor. I mean, some people already know once you hear BlackRock, but some people don't. BlackRock is a huge investor in, guess what? General Dynamics. So I just feel like it feels like I don't know, when the reporters that's happening, a pretty easy link. I'm not that meme of Charlie Day with the pictures and all the strings. This is not that. It's more like a straight line. Imagine I give you $10,000. You give that $10,000 to someone who buys a gun and decides to go on a murder rampage. It's like that. It's one person away. And so I've been feeling really sort of empowered by my students. And I feel really grateful for them for the way they've taken this leadership. And it's almost wild how they're sort of, what they're asking for is not even in the conversation. That is one of the key points they're asking for. They do not want to be complicit in these sort of massive deaths. And so they're asking for the schools to divest. That's one of the things. I just want to say that because I just don't hear it said enough. But back to the book. Part of what I'm saying in Chain Gang All-Stars is that the racism in our history informs the very idea of a prison the same way a parent informs their child, directly, inherently, genetically. And that same idea of history informs pretty much everything else. When I think about what this book is about, it's about many things, but one of like sort of the parts of it is that, and I've been sort of pleased to see is the quote that people pull out a lot. There's one of the characters says like the world could be anything, and it's a shame that it's this. That's really how I feel a lot of the time. We could really, really imagine things much different than they are. And I think one of like the great sort of like evils of the prison is it like stifles our imagination. We don't have to think about what is a compassionate response to the disease of addiction. We don't have to think about how could we truly integrate a compassionate response to the mental health crises that are everywhere. What if we didn't have a system that individualized and criminalized systemic issues like poverty? You know, all these things we don't really have to imagine because we have this system that just swallows everything else. So for this next part, it's not from the beginning or prologue or anything, it's right from the middle. It requires more effort, but we'll see. It's maybe kind of like rhythmic. So for, our white people, this is a chance to beat the no rhythm allegations. I've been working this out, so this is like, we're trying this new one. It involves humming. But before, I'll explain in a second. This section is from a different, further in the book where these people they're called links, who are in these like battlegrounds. They can also have these moments where they're like sort of traveling in this reality TV show while they're on their chain gangs. This section's about one of those chains where two members have recently been killed in those battleground scenes. And for y'all's part, this time you're gonna have to like sustain something. Actually, once you start, you won't stop. So it's a little bit of effort. So we'll see how you do. This is the tune to hum, and then we'll practice it first. So it goes. Keep going. Don't stop. Right. I seen Tar and Maestro the same year, So I'm like, I could do that too. Y'all will know when it's time to do that. So once it's time to hum, you don't stop. I'll do something else, but y'all will keep doing the hum. This chapter is called Sung. And real quick, it's from the point of view of a character who was in a prison modeled after a real system called the Auburn system, where prisoners were forced to be in 24-hour silence. And once he got out of that, he's sort of as like almost like repelling against that constraint. He's become someone who likes to sing, even in his mind's eye. He's always thinking in these sort of like poetic kind of spaces. Sung. We take steps heavy with loss. Both sides of the chain depleted by one on the battleground. The eraser triplets reduced to twins. Their third dispatched by the great raven ways. They ain't have no chance. The brothers have been confined together in the womb, in the cell, and finally in the open world of the killing games. Now they're separate for the first time. The two that are left wet the swastikas on their necks with tears, and their third killed by a black man at that. On our side, we lost 80. A good man that done bad long time ago. Big jovial man somehow, despite the blood on everything. Not a bad fight, but it wasn't a good one either. 80 hesitated for a moment, and in that moment, he found himself punctured in a way that could never be patched. Out on the circuit after the loss, Razor looks at me as we step through, crunching the evidence of Spring's relent on our feet. He's asking for a song. I don't got many remembrances memorized, I say. What you mean, Razor says. All that shit you sing sound like memorial shit, so go ahead. I look to Bells, who walks, head up, crying, and quiet. Man, I'll sing one if you ain't got one. All this goddamn singing the whole year, and now a singer ain't got a song in them. Imagine that. That's fucked, bro. Give me a tune at least. I'll freestyle one time for my bro, Razor says. A tune to hum comes to me immediately. I'll go. Mm-hmm. 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 Yep. I see Razor taking it in, closing his eyes. Mm-hmm. When he was hearing the living 80 and Razor and Bells would rhyme the miles away, passing the bars back and forth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. More than a few times they formed rhymes around my songs. Mm-hmm. Today, Razor takes the sound in, breathes it through his body. As we follow the anchor down a river I'll never know the name of. Mm-hmm. And Razor says, I love my boy, a fat man. I loved him when he got there. I know he done something wrong, but Lord, he gone. So please gonna let him in. Mm-hmm. Right away, Bells laughs. Another story of the name 80 is he was first called 800. But the way he thrust himself into working his body after barely winning his first 2 fights, story is he lost 2 humans worth. Changed his name to fit his size. 80. And Bell says, Reggie was a legend. Rather die, sink, or swim. He stood with me, and now he's free. So please go let him in. I feel it passing through me, and I do not deny the spirit. His mama named him a king's name, 'cause she knew what he had within. His only sin was too human. So please, Lord, let him in. So please, Lord, let him in. Mm-hmm. Good job, y'all. Excellent. I'm very impressed.
Hi, everyone. So glad to be here with the homie. I'm really impressed with the reading. I remember we did the launch of this, and this was not. This is performance art you're doing now.
Yeah, I felt like the first one, and Mitchell did my launch event, and that was like the craziest event I've ever had. It was in New York City. It was in the Schomburg Center. It was a lot of people. So when I did the Bishop, like this is a big group, you can get some energy.
Yeah.
But I think I started to feel kind of weird for people putting in the crowd, but not like the other side. You know. Also, you got to switch it up.
Yeah.
I feel like I got to like do something I feel a little bit terrified to try.
Yeah.
So that like the first time I did that, I was like terrified.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's still like not, you're still figuring it out. But yeah, I had people going, Bishop, Bishop. And there's like a ramp up energy in that.
Yeah.
But I felt like I'm putting the crowd like without, and they just have to go with it in like this like sort of like harsh context. They become the mob. And I was like, what if I let them be the other side too? And like a little bit more like soothing, a little bit more compassion space, a little bit more communal. So it's like both sides of like a different way of basically I'm like, I'm not doing all the work here.
Right, yeah.
I want everybody to contribute. So y'all did amazing. That was actually really good. I'm not just saying that. Sometimes, sometimes it doesn't hit. It doesn't always hit.
Yeah. Man, I've been to a lot of reading. That was the first time I did some humming. I was I'm very proud of myself. I appreciate you for giving me that moment.
Yeah, it's like an effortful thing, you know?
Yeah.
Both of them are effortful
Yeah.
because sometimes when I do the beginning, and I like readings to be like different, you
Yeah.
know? And the first one, once I tell you have to say the bishop thing, if you care, now you're kind of like on alert,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And that's like a way to like, I've been to a lot of readings, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of readings are pretty boring, just was, you know, just is a fact. And so I just try to find ways, but with the humming thing, it's cool because I find that like the more confident I am, the more confident people are. And
Mm.
like, so sometimes I'd be like, and now I'm getting to the point where I just realized I have it memorized a little bit now.
Mm.
So like, cause today I was like, I'm trying to create a metronome, whatever. This is what's going on in my head as I'm doing. I'm like, I don't want to turn this page because I don't want to lose this,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and I was like, I think I have it memorized, but I was like,
Uh.
do I have it memorized? And I was like, I think I do.
Yeah.
I think the rhyming helps. Anyways, whatever.
No, I think this is really interesting because I was having a conversation with my guy Ahmad today, and I was telling him you make music,
Yeah.
and it made me think about how the other and you right shoot you're a photographer as well, but how those other art forms inform what you do on the page.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't even think about that, but like when I go record, I mean I'm not like some like I barely like feel like I even feel comfortable saying like I make music, but
Yeah.
I do now. Like I have something on streaming now, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And but I have a bunch of songs in my phone I just listen to all the time by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go to record, I very rarely read it or never. Like I'm not like Jay-Z. I'm not saying just come in and write
Right,
it on
yeah.
the spot. No.
Yeah.
But I when I'm on planes, it helps me like to be less like anxious to write the lyrics or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I kind of internalize it. And I don't like to go, my bro's an engineer, he's a rapper, but he's also an engineer. And I don't go until like to me, like you put it in your body so good that it's just in you.
Mm.
And it's hard to like emotionally read. Like even ironically, even though that's all I do,
Yeah.
it's hard to like or like emphasize like for a song if you haven't like got it. Because I'm sure
Right.
you know, like when you do readings, I'm sure y'all feel it too. Like the first couple of times you're like learning how to read it.
Yes.
And then after a while, you still don't have it verbatim, but you know what's where to hit your pauses, where to hit those lines hard. And so, yeah, the music stuff and listening to the audiobook, I think it's all made me like, if not a better, a more ambitious reader. And it's also affected like that section even coming in. Like,
Yeah.
you know, music was a big part of this book, especially with the Hendrix stuff.
Yeah. I don't want to leave out the photography though, because I also feel like you're making so many images in this novel, right? Even the battle scenes, the wounds. And I wondered, I messed this quote up earlier trying to say it, but the John Berger quote, "The attentive eye makes the world mysterious." And I wondered if being a photographer kind of demystifies your image making
Yeah.
in the book.
Yeah, it did. And the reason I came to photography was I was trying to change my first book, Friday Black, for the screen.
Mhm.
And I don't like to, for me, like my dream scenario would be like if I directed a film, writing is my dream scenario already. But because as a writer, you are when you're writing a book, you're the director, you're every actor. I'm the DP, I'm the sound guy, I'm the gaffer, I'm everything.
Yeah.
And so I have this kind of an attitude about my stuff where I want to at least know about every piece of it. So
Yeah.
if I make a video or do film stuff, I'll be in Lightroom. I know about Lightroom. I know about focal lengths. I like to like get obsessive about whatever, and it just helps. So I was trying to adapt Friday Black for Scream, and I was saying like close up on blah blah blah, and I was like, what are you even talking about? Like, what does that mean? If you have never held a camera, it's hard to know exactly what you mean. I mean, I watch a lot of shows, but it's different until you've like constructed an image yourself.
Yeah.
Well, and obviously we all have a little bit of sort of like context for image making, or most of us do because of the phone, but the camera sort of and the cropping after and the editorial process of taking a photo like forces a different type of intentionality in like image making. And I've always been interested in like creating like iconic images. And I remember we had this exercise in my class in Syracuse. I went to grad school at Syracuse, and he was like, write a story that ends in a beautiful, like or memorable or something image.
Mm,
And I love the idea of like an image, and it's not just visual. I think of images as like just sensory, like fidelity,
mhm.
but we're so visual that that's what we think of most. But I love the idea of like creating an image that's really strong in someone's mind because it just helps you remember it better.
Yeah.
The example I give my kids is like, or my students is like the avatar, like the airbender avatar, like that
Yeah.
arrow, like makes Aang in a certain kind of way. It
Yeah.
becomes something. It's like it becomes a container for a lot of stuff. Same thing with like the lightning with Harry Potter, like lightning in the glasses, having those strong images almost allows for the character to hold more later
Mm,
on. And so that was one part of it. I was really interested in that. But then with the photography, I was able to really be like, here's exactly what I think matters. Here's like, because there could be a lot of things in a scene in a photo,
yeah.
but you can do a lot of techniques to make someone's eye go to that.
Yeah.
And I feel photography has helped me do that because to me it's all really storytelling: the music stuff, the writing stuff, the photography stuff, the video stuff. It it's almost like you just have to learn the technical realities of each of them, but to me it's all just story stuff. At least that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Um, it made me think about audience. You know, there's a different audience maybe for the music, a different audience maybe for the photography, a
Yeah.
different audience maybe for the novel. I wondered how you thought about audience. And then I was rereading the review, the New York Times book review of your book. I can't remember the writer, which I should. That's
Yeah.
foul that I can't remember it.
The fact that I
It was
can
good. It was good though. It was great. It was a rave. So thank you for the rave.
shout out to the
Uh,
homie.
yeah.
I'll get his name in a second too, but
Yeah. He said something about audience, and he said something like, you made the people who read the book feel implicated.
yeah.
And I always think about the idea of implicating the reader in whatever the situation in the book. And I wondered if that was one of your goals going in. And then how did you do it?
Yeah, it's really. I was just talking about this with some of the students earlier today. To me, it's a huge part implication of the audience, but really starts with just implication of myself. That's how I started. The example I'll give is a time where I realized this was super key to me is um, actually first I'll say like Roger Reeves, the poet. He does that talk about the work of art in the age of Ferguson and Charleston and Baltimore, and he talks a lot about like how to ethically employ violence, and a big part of his implication of like the speaker or yourself or
Yeah.
whatever. So I've always taken that to heart because I deal with a lot of serious subjects, but I don't ever want to present as though I'm like on some hill telling everybody how fucked up they are. You know, like I know better because all those violences, all those capacities are in me too, and that acknowledging that helps you be generous towards everyone else. But the place where like there's a moment where I had like this like almost like eureka moment in my first book. Like I it was called the title story is called Friday Black, and there's a moment where it's about like Black Fridays. You know, I'm super creative that way, I guess. Like where everybody is like turned to like 1 million. They're killing each other. It's like zombie apocalypse, but they're all motivated to buy things. And the protagonist is really trying to like do well so he can win a jacket for his mom. In real life, I've wanted a jacket for my mom. In real life, I've worked like 19 hours on Black Friday trying to win my mom a North Face. It didn't even fit her, but whatever. And like I've been in that position, but in the story, the character was like they're like the zombies or the shoppers are like and they're like fighting, but his skills that he can understand them. He knows what they want. That's how he's able to like succeed. And I had written that story and I had gotten to an end, but it always felt just like a little, I don't know. For y'all, I don't know that like there's like a feeling you could tell when a story feels like I won't be ashamed if this comes out. It's not dumb, but there's like a to me, there's like a feeling. I don't know how to name it, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like there's like a certain feeling of like, okay. And that one I couldn't tell and I had it for years. I'm almost ashamed to say. But then there's this moment where one of the other shoppers in the mall had just quit and he's going down in the escalator and the protagonist is going up on the escalator. And the one going down, his name is Duo. He says like, "Peace, bro. I couldn't do that shit no more." And I write and I woke up in the middle of the night one day and oh, this is it, you know. And he said, I don't know the exact line, but it's more like the idea is that the protagonist goes, I mumbled something to him as I passed, and we don't know what he mumbles, but the other guy says, bro, don't worry, like your mom loves you regardless. And so the moment ends up being like, oh, he's also just as infected. He's like doing the, but his own controlled way. And because the other guy got bit, he can now understand him too. So, so like, as opposed to just being this guy who's like all knowing and smart, the reason he understands because he's also infected. And like, so my thing is like, we're all infected. And so I try my best to like work from that space. So in a book that's about abolition, like I know part of why I was interested in doing this, I was also afraid of doing it because when you write a book like this, the first thing people say is, but also the first person is actually my own self saying, well, what about murderers and rapists? What about that? And what about also you? Like when someone harms you, like you harm them.
Right.
That's your attitude.
Yeah.
And then you have to negotiate those things. You have to fight, so to speak, with like and wrestle with those like hard questions. But that wrestling to me is where I feel interested. And so I know we all have a pretty strong taste for violence. Just look at every single movie, look at every single game. And I like movies, I like games, but I know we have a taste for it. And so how can I play with that? How can I impact that? When is that okay? When does that become destructive? All these things I'm always thinking about, but it starts with me acknowledging to myself that like, you're not no saint, like you're not perfect. You have a lot of these like violent tendencies. And you also have like, the joke I was saying is like, I was very much an abolitionist, like on paper, like I've lived with poets before. Like I know like the party line, but like, and I was kind of like, eh. But then by doing the research and like arming myself with like actually understanding the history and like real context, and at this point now I just came back from Parchment Prison a couple of days ago.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's probably the best event I've ever done ever. And just to look in the eyes of these people who like, cause it just gets less theoretical. Like that's a human being in a cage in these stripes for years, 40 years. And I know it's not right. And it's not like I have the answer, but I don't think my fiction has to have that answer.
Yeah.
So that was a long answer, but yeah.
No, I love it, man. It reminds me when I got to one of the prisons where I was incarcerated. I remember the first day I got there, I walked by this guy. He was sitting on his bunk, and he looked like the meanest dude in the world. He was mugging, he was bald-headed, he was brolic. And I walked by, I'm like, damn, okay, I better leave homie alone. He looked like he's serious. So I get down and I start talking to a couple of my partners. I'm like, hey man, like what homie down for? And like, oh man, he down for murder. But he about to go home. He didn't already done like 20. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm leave homie alone then. Then me and him became friends. I end up finding out that the murder that he did was a gang retaliation. He walked into this dude's house, knocked on the door, walked into this dude's house, shot him and killed him and walked out. Like some cold-blooded stuff. This guy was the nicest guy ever. He left prison, started writing me letters. I was like, damn, OZ is like a little soft dude. And that really, I mean, I had been there a while and I knew other people who had done similar things, but I was like, no, this is a human that I'm interacting with, man.
It's all humans. Everybody's human. And like, I think we feel uncomfortable with that because we all have sort of implicitly or explicitly accepted an idea that if we do a certain amount of things, we ourselves are not deserving of love, us or individually.
Yeah.
And that's the precedent that the carceral state establishes.
Yeah.
That if you do a certain amount of thing, we deserve to literally cook you however we want.
Yeah.
Very extremely literally. And like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean to like I've been thinking about, imagine you visit someone's house and it's like a super nice house. They got all the video games, super nice, like whatever. But like in the living room over there, they have like Iron Maiden? Like,
yeah.
like an Iron Maiden.
Uh-huh.
And like, don't worry, it's not free. The Iron Maiden's like a thing where you
close it up with the
that, like,
spikes.
with spikes.
Yeah.
And they're like, but like, no, that's not for you. That's for the bad people.
Yeah. Like, don't do nothing wrong up in
You're
here.
good. No, you're great. You don't have to worry about it. But for the bad people, that's for them.
Yeah.
And it's there. Like, that would change the way you feel about the house. And in fact, the house is no longer like a chill house no more. You probably wouldn't want to chill there no more.
Yeah.
So like, to me, it's really like that. Not to mention, like, again, like I could get into like the race, obviously, whatever, the racism, not in the way the homophobia of the carceral state, not into the transphobia of the carceral state, not into the way it obviously sort of like targets impoverished people, not leaving all those things away. Like, it just keeps us up from like even having to grow. Like, okay, what if we didn't have Iron Maidens for people? And what if instead we try to understand how they got to the place where they would do something like this, and build real infrastructure from a more compassionate place?
Yeah.
What if we didn't allow the school to literally invest in that General Dynamics thing. I found that out recently because I was like, this is nuts. Because that's, like that's a Fortune 500 company.
Right.
That's like I think they really might be in the top 100 companies.
Wow.
That bomb is also, I think it's $3,000, which is kind of cheap.
For a bomb of that radius.
100,
Yeah.
but I mean, they're buying in bulk, I guess. That's why.
Yeah.
I did the math. I think it's like 5.5 million
Yeah.
for that little
Costco
thing.
bombs.
Yeah. And if you could do the math on think about how big Gaza is.
Yeah.
That many bombs is enough to wipe it off completely the map 100, like probably 30 times.
Mm.
It's nuts. But anyways, yeah, the going to Parchment and being those, really going anywhere. Like, there's so many people that I know have done terrible things. I know I've done things that all of us have, but we're still sort of pretending in this space where we have this purity, this feeling of. I was watching a comedian talking about how he feels bad for this generation because we don't have any more heroes. It's because we have so much access, and that sort of heroism that we had before was super an illusion. I mean, we kind of know. I think we kind of accept that most of those people that we were looking up to before had so many demons.
Yeah.
Like, you would have never thought Charlie Rose was doing the Charlie
Right.
Rose was doing.
Yeah.
I was like, Charlie Rose? You wouldn't think that, but
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say Charlie Rose is some great guy. I'm just saying that everybody's human.
Yeah. You mentioned there's a moment where we were doing our humming where the guy has come out of a prison modeled after the Auburn system. And I don't know if everyone knows the difference between the Auburn and the Pennsylvania system, but I wondered, I know that we had two systems, and then we moved to the Auburn system, which was about people that were incarcerated working, which included that silence, and really, I think, kind of connected the carceral state to economics in a way that the Pennsylvania system didn't with this idea of penitence. So I wonder if you could explain maybe those two systems, if you care to, and really thinking, what would our system have looked like if we had have taken, if the Pennsylvania system and that idea of penitence had have become the broader system?
So the Auburn system, it has a lot to do with just making you a better cog in a machine, essentially. And the science is a very notable part of it, but it's really about your productivity, which we're really into now. Because again, that's another thing. We're all implicated by the labor. You could say it's slave labor, or you could say it's just super underpaid labor of people who are incarcerated. Right now, we all have things made by people who are barely being paid. But the Pennsylvania side, it's sort of more if you you're coming to a penitent, you are trying to reflect on it. It's still has a lot of isolation stuff, and so it's very still not great. But the ethos behind it is that we'll put you in this space. You'll come to sort of you'll pay for it through reflecting, kind of like a religious sort of context.
Yeah.
And you'll that'll be it.
Yeah.
I think that our system now tries to have it kind of both ways. Right now, I think they try to say it's that.
Mm-hmm.
Because a part of the rehabilitation, I guess, model is probably penance, on some level.
Yeah.
But I think that to be honest, I think that we've fully adopted just this idea that people are whatever we got to say to make it okay for people to be like slaves. That's my attitude about it now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that whatever they say, they'll, even if they have to add some nice piece to it, they'll do that. If they have to take away that, whatever we have to do so that we have a group of people that we know that we can kill. But it has to be okay to kill them, literally kill. To me, that feels really important. Because again, I think that I'm getting more and more interested, because the idea, the penance part, the Pennsylvania side, it means that there's a incorruptible piece if you really adopt it.
Yeah.
And I think that they kind of, I mean, just having the militarized state really depends on us not believing that. That you are extremely corruptible. There is a version of you that deserves to be shot in the head.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the fundamental difference. But I don't know, and I haven't gone to that many prisons, but
Mhm.
I know that the pressure we're putting is doing something though, because in Mississippi, in Parchman, Jay-Z and them have made that movie where they try to like talk about how bad it is, and so they have a brand new what do you call it, superintendent who's like the over warden of
Yeah.
all the wardens. And can I tell you, he came to the book club meeting
Oh, wow.
for my book.
Yeah.
Um, I want to say more about it, but I don't want to say it on tape and mess up like the thing there. But um,
Need some more parchment
he
visits.
came to the thing, and the dudes were super cool. They were some of the best readers I've ever had, and some of them had murdered people.
Yeah.
And what they said to me was, first off, they were super grateful. I don't be like just crying at my events. I was like crying in there because they were so kind, so generous, and they read it so closely.
Yeah.
And they said, people like feel really, they feel really badly when people do bad, but they don't understand that we're the ones who are thinking about it all the time.
Mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
they had really achieved like a state of grace.
Yeah.
My section happened to be in a group where they took me it's called 31. It was men who had either a very serious illness or older.
Okay.
So these guys have been in the prison for a very long time.
Yeah.
But they were like, we have like this. They understood they had something to share.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is like a non-theoretical understanding that, man, you can go through the fire of having done maybe the worst possible thing and still be here. And what can I tell to you that make you never do that again? And they were like, let them know that, we're here and we have something. And I've been trying to like put that spirit in everything I do now, because it was kind of life-changing. Like, I've done other stuff, but I had never had gone where they had read the book in the prison.
Yeah.
And the little thing I'll say is, respectfully to the warden, he was like, everyone went around and said the book that they like their favorite book to, like, as an icebreaker. A lot of them said the Bible. This is Mississippi. A lot of them was really rooted in like the Bible. When we got to him, he said, I don't really read. And I was like, I can tell.
Yeah.
There's no way I would be here. I was like, there's no way you would ever be here. But I didn't say that. I was like,
Yeah. You want to get up out of there, don't you?
if you can believe it, like in that context, though, he's doing like amazing. And that's the challenge I have for myself now. Like, how do I keep the grace I'm talking about for the overseers and administrators of like the thing I'm sort of talking about?
Yeah.
He's trying. I could get more into it, but that's the thing that happened. Imagine like all these guys, super well read, blah blah blah. But like the king of the space is like,
You
yeah, I don't do that.
read.
His wife reads. His wife reads, and she gives him like summaries. And I said, "How'd you like the summary?"
Yeah.
I'm trying to make this up.
Man. I want to ask one more question and then open it. You have the idea of high freed and low freed in the book. And I could not help but think about the university's role in the idea of high free and low free, especially with what we're experiencing now, but then also the role of literature in achieving a kind of philosophical high freed and low freed. And if you could speak to that.
Yeah, so in the book, low freed means like being killed in the system, but still freed. And high freed is like you survive. Like the whole thing is, if you survive 3 years, you get freedom, you get clemency. That's like the big the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for all these people. It's sort of why they join, but almost no one ever gets it. And I think it's interesting because I'm not sure how I came to that, but I knew that first I had there was like a ranking system. It went like rookie, survivor, cusp, reaper, harsh reaper, colossal, grand colossal, freed. So I had like freed as like the status, the state of being, And then then of course you're like, well, the idea of freedom is like, just what does that even mean? And there's a moment in the book, like, it may be a spoiler, but when the character's like, it's her, like, if there's a fight where you couldn't be freed, it's called like a freeing day. Like if you get that far, like that's a freeing day. And I was just thinking about how there's so many opportunities for us to try to get that, but also there's so many opportunities where we're sort of given the idea of freedom. Just make this money, just get this degree, just get this da-da-da, just get this whatever. And again, I say this without like, not from some level, like I'm 100% like a product of that. I was like, man, if I get a book and I win X award, I'm gonna fix my family's life and I'm gonna make everyone not poor and my mom will be healed and we'll be free of all this stuff, And it becomes like, unfortunately or conveniently, like, what's the way to get freed? Like, be a producer for their thing. And even as an artist, you can kind of feel like you're not in it, but it's four families that own all the big publishers, you know what I mean? And like, not to be like a downer about being a writer, but if you want to traditionally publish, I'm not saying it's not valuable. I think it's extremely worthy. I think it's extremely valuable, but unfortunately, we're working in the confines of like the same system that is like shackling us all, anyways. And so, the high freed and the low freed was like sort of just like this, like, it made me put pressure on like what that means. Like, what does it mean to be fully free? What does it mean to be out? Like, what does it mean to be all the way? Like, what are you actually like trying to get? And not sort of being super tempted by things that I'm definitely tempted by, you know, and like, or at least acknowledging that and seeing for myself that it's not just pressing on that and be like, you know, it's not like some easy thing. There's not some easy way, and there's gonna be a lot of temptations for something that looks like free, but is actually a different kind of death. Not to, but that sounds pretty dark. So it's also
They're
fine.
gonna have some questions just right up.
I'm like, a different kind of death. So questions, guys.
I'm like, Matt, you gonna keep us on the
I saw a hand over there.
All right.
I saw a hand over there.
Where? Hey, that's my student. That's my student.
Hey.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much. Super interesting answers. I love hearing all of it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, you kind of talked about this, about like how you wrote about violence. I'm interested in like a craft perspective, maybe. Like, what did you decide like should not go on the page, I guess, or like strategies for like the words that
Yeah.
went on it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's every single like scene is like has its own answer. But I'll tell you, like sort of like my core principle, my main idea is like, it'll never be like a like explosive moment of violence that I'm describing because I think it's like pretty. You know, like, look how dope it is that I can describe this. You know, and I've done that before and been corrected for it. And I'm really, I had a writer named Dana Spiota. I thought I had like written this like super dope. It had to do with someone splayed on a like a toilet, and I like, they look crucified there, and blah. I was like, yeah, I really got him with this one. And I remember her being like no. And I was like, and I, you know, like, if you ever got workshop, you know, the one where you like, you thought they're gonna be like, yeah. And she was like, nah. And it was one of the things I workshopped. I kept it. And she was like, nah, again. And she's someone I really respect. And I also count myself as someone who like takes edits pretty good. I think like the faster you can become someone who takes edits good, you faster you become a better writer. Or at least the faster you can like articulate like why you are or not taking edits is better, as opposed to just have this like knee jerk, like, oh, fuck that, whatever. Um, and it was because it wasn't, to me, it just wasn't being compassionate about the character enough. It was letting them be a vehicle for like, look how dope Nana is, as opposed to like letting it be like meaningful and useful to the story. Um, so that's really important. Never like, I try my, and I say that I feel that way about other things too, but especially with like these depictions of violence, which it can get out of hand because I think I'm good at it, and I have like so in terms of like the actual writing stuff, for me, I try to break down movements to their component parts. And the example I've been giving people is like, when you go to like yoga, they don't just be like downward dog, blah 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 blah. They say like, sometimes they say downward dog, but they'll say plant your feet hip width apart, hinge at your hips, put your palms into the ground, let your fingers grip the ground. You'll pedal your left foot, then your right. And so both those things were the same thing, but one of them was like the component parts. So when you think about like a swinging a hammer, she swung a hammer, she ducked, he ducked, great. Or they she her grip tightened just a bit before she planted her left foot hard. Her hips shifted, and the kinetic force flowed from her rib cage up to her shoulder and to her elbow. You know, whatever I'm talking, whatever. I can't do it on the spot, but you get what I'm trying to say. And like, so but if you do that though, you also get to like, by breaking up the movement, you also get to like talk about things that are not the movement in between them. So again, Dennis Briota had told me like anything, if you pay enough attention to anything, it can become literary. And so if someone's running, I could describe them running piece by piece, but also in between that, I could talk about like the sort of spiritual feeling of it. And then that creates like and I can also speak to their humanity. I could do a lot of things, but basically by being really specific about the component parts of any like physical movement in terms of violence or action, but that's really in anything, but that's how I think about it in the action sequences. I can like be really clear about their like some of their human parts too. But also the other part is just not trying to be like, look how dope I am because I described a big explosion. And you know when a show is doing that. I like the show, and it's a show I like, but I'm like sort of critiquing it in this way because I think it's useful for what it's doing, but I can't do it. Like the show like The Boys. Have you ever seen that show? Like they're clearly trying to say something about the world, and it's important. And I think for a certain audience, like that's exactly how they have to do it to hear it. But sometimes in that show, someone's head's gonna blow up just so someone's head could blow up, and be like, "Oh shit!" They're like, because they had the SFX budget basically, and I try not to do that, even though I know I could. You know, like I know I have the pyrotechnic like ability to, but like to me, it then cheapens something too for my style. I think they're trying to really like capture like the bros, like the Call of Duty bros guys, you know, and be like, hey, like y'all, you're kind of being an asshole, like, and it's like, so you need that too. But for me, it's just not. I'm a little bit more towards like no one's head gets blown up just because I had the budget. I say that with respect for that show. It's a good question.
Hi, thank you so much. This was amazing, and the interaction with the audience just
I did a good job. I appreciate you.
I have a question about your process. I was really moved by the use of footnotes in the book,
Yeah.
and I wanted to know at what, like, were you always like, I'm gonna have footnotes, or at what point were you like, I need to be able to say these things and be part of the book? But they like just the whole thought process, like how do they get included? Which ones were you like,
Yeah.
these need to be there in these moments? Yeah.
It's a really good question. I'm like trying to like consolidate the answer because I could get really into the weeds with it. But the short answer is like definitely not always going to be there. I don't even like footnotes traditionally. But again, like I said before, to me, I had to like reverse engineer why I don't like it. To me, it broke the fictive dream. I had read like the Art of Fiction with the John Gardner early on. I was like, never like that's my shit. Like never break that. And so like it sort of reminds you that it's a text by existing. But also what I did, so it breaks the dream, I thought, but also what it is it's always like the same type of thing. It's always sort of like encyclopedic. So to me, what I did, it was I tried to make it I tried to vary the types of things that could appear, or like some of them are elegiac, some of them are like encyclopedic about the real world, some of them encyclopedic about the fake world, some of them are just other things. That creates a moment, opportunity for like discovery or wonder or delight in my mind, in the way type of reader I am. So it's like sort of like a box that you don't know what's going to be in it, and that's like kind of exciting for if you're a reader like me. So that's one part of it. But in terms of like the other stuff, I didn't know I was always going to do it, but I have a big, and some people might say this is like not the literariest, the most literary way of literariest, whatever, the most literary way of handling it. But there's a lot of examples of like things being read like the exact opposite way they are intended to be read. And I like the guys who like the super aggro bros like love Fight Club. It's like maybe like the really good example. They don't understand they're being satirized. It's a real thing. Same thing with like I was arguing with people on the internet, and I shouldn't do it, but sometimes like about Succession, and people are like, "Oh, I'm Team Kendall, I'm Team so and so." I'm like, "You don't get it." And they're like, "Oh, I'm allowed to enjoy the show however I want." I'm like, "Not really." Like you're getting the exact opposite thing. Like you're totally buying in. Like, but it's not to say that you can't have. They did something. It's a hard line to thread when you're doing this kind of stuff, which I understand because I do it too. Where like you're sort of satirizing something, you are humanizing this person, but like to fall in love with their plight above all the things that they've done, owning is like to like misread the show, in my opinion. And so I don't want that to happen. The Robert Frost is like another good example. Like people read that like the opposite of what it's supposed to be, the two roads, whatever. So I basically just didn't want it to be possible to read the book about like, oh, this is about a woman who has a hammer and kills people. Because you'd be surprised. I talked to someone who read Squid Game and they never thought about capitalism once. Seriously. So that terrifies me a little bit. I met the guy who did there's a lot of examples. The guy who did The Purge. There's unironic Purge enthusiasts. For real. and they're like obviously like Trump people, but like the fact that it's possible to watch that movie and not understand that like that just feels stressful to me. And I'm not saying it's his fault again, and I don't think you should cater to like the lowest, dumbest person, but I felt I wanted to find a way that could be impossible. There's one like back there, but there's also one right there. I'll go quick so I can get y'all both.
All right, I'll go really quick. First, I want to say thank you for talking about what's happening in Colombia. I'm a Palestinian American student, so I think it's really important for us to think critically about how our university is also culpable and
Big facts.
yeah, also part of the greater system that suppresses Palestinians across the globe. So thank
It's
you.
important.
Kind of speaking towards that, after reading this book and kind of being in the conversation of like activist fiction or kind of people talking a lot about the prison industrial complex, how has your process changed thinking about going forward now that you have this pressure, or like do you feel like there's a desire people have about like certain types of stories from you, and
Right.
how are you gonna like, do you have a plan, or are you just kind of like letting it happen, or where are you gonna go from now?
No plan, just vibes. No, there's one more about in the red right there, but I'll answer it while you're getting the mic. Um, um, I I think I'm not like I think I don't feel that pressure. Um, I think I don't feel that pressure. I think I'm not afraid. I think, but that's easy to say because I'm not like neck deep in the project. But my first book, after they were like, "Wow, do you feel like scared to like do this next one? Do you feel afraid to like match it? Do you feel like you gotta like do that?" And I was like, "No, I don't." And then I started to get later on. I was like, "Am I scared now?" You know, kind of. I think that I don't feel any pressure to like take on any particular issue, but I just know the kind of person I am, and I know the forces that animate and shape my life. And I get like angry and like the more I'm going into like this military thing and general dynamics, like at some point I know I'm gonna try to like fight them via story, you know? Like I know for sure. Like I just don't fuck with them. And like this is my way of like, and I thought that sounds so like petty and simple and low, but like I just, and by them I say I don't fuck with like the world that allows a private company to like do that and be rich, you know? So that's like something like I'm interested in. Um but maybe more specifically in terms of me, like I feel like I've just recently started to become comfortable talking about like I think like my big like bad horror cruxes in my own life, or like my big bad like things that have like made me a writer. A lot of it has to do with my mom's mental health. My mom suffers from pretty serious mental health problems, and that's kind of like probably why I'm a writer. I think I've only just realized like with really deep wounds, like it's hard to like put them in like the pot of everyone, because you're like, oh, my pain is so big, my pain is so special, but then you kind of realize, oh wait, this is like a systemic lack. And that's a big part of my writing, has like realized like these like depersonalizing my stuff and realizing it's sort of a systemic thing. And so on some level, I guess what I'm saying is I think like the realities of like living with someone, like having someone who's like sort of like disappeared from you through but is right there. Like I'm interested in that a lot. I don't feel pressure to like take on some big subjects because this is what I talk about. I write slow, and the things I'm interested in are just like those big things. I'm interested in borders. I'm interested in the idea of a nation. I have a lot of stories that are like that. But my next book is going to be a short story collection. I think it's going to be a lot more stories that are like not so not overtly speculative. There will be that too. Some of them will be more like stuff about where I'm from. And I do feel like some people, even in my first book, you would think I only wrote about like these big, high idea stuff. I don't always do that, but it's what catches people's eye, because they don't know where to, when you work in a way that is considered quote unquote literary, and you have quote unquote like genre stuff. All these are just made up kind of bullshit things, anyways, to me. But like whatever. When you work in those contexts, they like something happens. And it's like the the literary landscape's brain, where they don't know what to do. I'm sure you feel something similar. And so I am a little bit like something, but also I don't care though. I think I don't care. Part of why I like the music stuff is like no one cares. You know, but again, that's easy to say because I've been very lucky. So what happens if I put out a book and like it's totally different, maybe then I'll start caring. Right now I feel like it's a great question. With us, yeah.
Yeah, so I've not read your book yet, but My question is, being of a Ghanaian descent,
Yeah.
how has your interaction with this diasporan culture and indeed the dystopian culture we live in influenced the way you write?
It's a good question from a fellow Ghanaian, and it's hard to answer because I don't know where like Ghanaian me starts or American me ends or all those things. But for me, like storytelling is a part of the culture. Like I really grew up with like a Nancy like stories just like told to me from my dad, like really, and those stories are not like worried about like realism or whatever. Like I feel like our stories are much more naturally in the space of whatever the story needs is there. And I also remember back then, even my dad, like he would tell a story and like whatever, it's like Anansi and there's like these rabbit children and these tigers, and then the tiger eats the rabbit children. And I remember being like, nah, we don't want that. And he would like edit it that they weren't really eaten. And so like I had like like a bit like starts changing it already. So I feel like that's some of it. I also think like I've also been wondering a little bit now, more recently, is like as you like Ghana is very, it's not inherently this way, but now it's like some parts of it are very, very Christian. And my parents are very, very Christian, or my dad when he was alive was, and my relationship to it was always like shifting or growing or changing. And sometimes I'm like, there's a period where I just felt so like anti, but now I'm sort of like, it's okay. I don't know, whatever. But the important part is that you're learning again. You're receiving stories that are explicitly concerned with like goodness or badness, and really compassion. Actually, even though like again like that text like anything else can be used and manipulated to become the most hateful thing ever. But I think there's something to that. Like having been like nonstop get story about this story. Like the purpose of you reading this story is to be a better person. I think on some level, good, bad, or whatever, that just being like in my like childhood is, I know it affects me somehow. I probably still like I haven't got to like that chapter of therapy yet, but like I know it's I know I'm starting to see like that's there. When I was in Mississippi, I was talking about it because I was like, I think it's kind of weird how people can evoke this religion to be super hateful to like everybody. But let's talk about like the queer community right now. But how come there's other bars that were said that we pay less attention to? Like it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. How come that's never like brought up? I'm like, what about that part? You have like a rich man telling everyone you can't be gay. I'm like, well, hold on, I'm just like, but like that's a cool like that idea. Leave it just that alone. That's interesting, and that speaks towards like one of the other stuff I'm thinking about anyway in terms of consumer capitalism. But like, how come that's just not in it? So, anyways, those things are. I think that's connected too. Thank you guys. So, oh wait, one more quick.
Hi, so this is a question from our Zoom call from some
Sweet.
anonymous.
Shout out to y'all on Zoom.
So the question is, do you ever find yourself thinking about how to balance the weight of the political social commentary and keeping a non-political reader engaged?
No. No. No, I think I don't write the story, if you can believe it, like trying to be like, oh, let me get, even despite all I'm saying, I'm actually working on a line level trying to be as engaging as possible. So that's already there no matter what, in my feeling, I hope. I'm not saying like, oh, this is the time as I'm revising, I understand what I'm doing, especially with a book like this. Like if you can believe it, at the very, very beginning, I didn't even know I was writing about prisons. I just had like the idea of a woman in the arena. But pretty soon I got that, and I don't like fight that either, but I wasn't like working towards like from the beginning, oh, this is gonna be my prison takedown book. Like I don't like this is my campus. Like it's not the way I work, even though like I can when I was talking about the mental health stuff, it's almost like a boat I can just see. I don't know the way that's gonna appear. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I can kind of see like I'm this thing that I was too afraid to look at for a long time is now starting to be more front of my consciousness as opposed to like in my over here. So I can because of the kind of person I am, I'm sure at some point we'll arrive in a story form. But that person who's not political, because again, I'm not even trying to like shit on them, that hypothetical reader, or I am a little bit, but not a lot. And like, it's sort of just like, I think part of what my role, to be honest, in this whole like context is, if they're not, there's a lot of people who actually are not political who I think like my stuff. And that's part of my role probably. Cause like they won't read Angela Davis, but they might read me. And I kind of get to be like a little Trojan horse, but I gotcha. You know what I mean? You know, they might not read Ruth Wilson Gilmore, but like that's who like is saying the same stuff, but just in a different way. And so like in some ways I'm grateful for that person who considers themselves that, because they aren't that, but they just haven't been given the sort of right framework to really see that like this stuff affects your life anyway. So I'm grateful for that person too. I'm grateful for whoever reads it, but I don't try to be like less political to make them feel whatever. Thank you guys so much.